Hi, I'm Remington Campbell, and this is the History of Musical Theatre interview show. If there's random noises during this interview, it's because we're both having temperature control related issues. Today I have Lauren Johnson on, and she's going to introduce herself.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Remy. My name is Lauren Johnson, and I'm really excited to talk to you today.
So, my first question is so, out of all my guests that I've had, you're the person I actually know the least about. You seemed like such a ballet history nerd, and I was like, gotta get this girl on the show.
Yeah.
What's your background and training?
Well, I began dancing. The story goes, I was dancing before I was walking. Like while I was still like holding on to the couch and holding on to walls to stand, that I would be bouncing to music anytime it came on TV. So I actually enrolled in my first dance class when I was 2 years old. And then I turned three during that year. So my first recital was at three. And I just haven't stopped dancing since then.
And then what brought you to New York?
Well, I never intended to end up in New York. It kind of, twisty, windy road. Growing up, I learned all styles of dance, ballet, tap, jazz. And when I got into elementary school, and now I'm wondering if there's going to be like regional differences in what I say. So I
Primary
was in second.
school.
Okay, yep. I was in second grade. Would that be like grade two?
Yeah,
What do you guys say? So,
we'd say grade two.
I
Oh no.
became like I was obsessed, and the studio that I grew up at had a really strong hip hop program, and so that kind of became my primary focus for all the way until I graduated. And I still continued taking ballet and jazz and contemporary and acro, but they were more secondary to me, to
Yeah.
hip hop. And I even was able to train with some really great hip hop teachers, like that taught breaking and popping and whacking and different genres of street styles, which was
You know,
really cool and pretty unique.
it's a serious
Um,
hip hop program when it's not just hip hop, but you do different styles.
right. So my big thing here in the States. The show is So You Think You Can Dance, and that was what I grew up watching. And I was determined, like, when I get to be 18, I'm going to audition for that show and become a famous dancer through that show. And that did not happen, but it was really good motivation and inspiration. When I turned 18, I actually did audition for the show. Um, and I didn't even get to the part where it was televised. There's like pre-screening processes and
Yeah.
stuff. But it was really exciting. And then that season, the people that did get onto the show, all of a sudden it was like, wow, these people on TV aren't just like famous dancers. They are my age,
Yeah.
just graduating high school, and like I could be doing that. Like these aren't famous people. These are that could be me type of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am going to move to LA and become a commercial dancer, dance backup for Beyonce and Justin Timberlake and do concerts and commercials. And I was like, that's what I'm trained to do. That's what I'm going to do. Um, but I wanted to go to college first. And at that time, I was like, I know I'm going to get a college degree. I'm going to do 4 years of college and then move and start my dance career. And so I went to college, I went to university, and within the first month there, that So You Think You Can Dance show tour, their first stop of the tour was actually at the Performing Arts Center on my campus. And I was like, I had been obsessed with them on TV. They're my age. Oh my gosh, they're doing it now. They're on tour. And I ended up getting a last minute ticket to the show and getting to talk with a bunch of them afterwards. Turns out one of them was from like nearby my hometown. And I had some conversations with them about like, so what's next for you? Are you guys going to college? Are you moving to LA? Are you moving to New York? And they all had different answers. But it made me realize that if I want to be a professional dancer, I need to pursue this right now
Yeah.
and take action steps and not wait for 4 years. So right after that, I transferred to a different university that was closer to home so that I could live at home and save money in order to move to LA. And in that process, I was like, I should probably figure out, like, if I really want to be a professional dancer, like dip my toe in the water and see what it's like. And so I researched some different pre-professional programs in LA and New York that I could apply for. And it was kind of like one semester, it was 4 months, but it was like really intensive training. And they would introduce you to industry professionals, different people that worked for different agencies and that worked in different areas of the performing arts world. And I ended up choosing one in New York because so it was called the Professional Semester at Broadway Dance Center.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a band-aid for me in terms of like LA. It's like, well, I'll just try out New York because it's a little bit closer to me. It's a little bit more affordable. I'm more familiar with the city. I've never been to LA before, but this is just so I can see what it's like to be in this kind of competitive environment.
Yeah.
But really the goal was still LA. And then I got to New York and I fell in love with Broadway. I saw my first Broadway shows. The first show that I saw was Pippin, the revival, which was not my favorite at the time. I wish now I could go back because I would appreciate it so much more. It was starring Terrence Mann was in it, and he's married to Charlotte Dembois, and Charlotte Dembois is the daughter of Jacques Dembois, the principal dancer, the famed principal dancer of New York City Ballet. So it's like, yes, all those things that I know now that I had no idea when I first stepped into a Broadway show.
Yeah.
But the first show that really had an impact on me was I went to see Newsies on their second to last performance before the show closed. And the energy in that theater was insane. There was a standing ovation after the opening number, which like never happens. And
but well earned.
You could tell it was friends and families and Yes, it was friends and family and super fans all in this audience. And then me who like had no clue. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I could be doing that. I could be jumping and turning and, getting this kind of reaction from the audience.
Yeah.
And that was kind of that was the start of the turning point where I slowly was like, oh, it's not LA. New York is what I want to do. But I didn't train in that growing up. I was a hip hop dancer. So it was like reframing all of my training and learning a whole new world that's still within dance.
Yeah.
So after that program is when I moved to New York. And so that was kind of the roundabout way that I ended up moving here.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah, it was unexpected. So I was 20 when I moved to New York.
And then how did you start becoming a theater book collector? Because I find your theater book collection fascinating. I thought I had an impressive library because my if you're not a theater book, you live on the floor, and if you are a theater book, you live on the bookshelf.
Yes, so there's a hierarchy there with your book.
There's a hierarchy, and there's like the Shakespeare shelf and the music shelf and the dance shelf.
Yep, I get it.
But mine seems dismal, frankly.
So the way that started, I had always been surrounded with books growing up. My mom was a school teacher and now she's a literacy consultant. So everything that she does is with books and writing.
Yeah.
So I had, just being a dancer and having a mom that loves books, I had picture books about dance growing up. But when I actually started to collect books, okay, here's the story. So while I was doing that professional semester at BDC, Broadway Dance Center, we had a chance to go to New York City Ballet and get a tour of the theater and learn about the history of the theater, because it's so interesting. It's called the Jewel Box, and there's all these so much symbolism in the theater, and we got to learn about that. And before this day, I had never heard of New York City Ballet, and I did not follow ballet. As again, I was a hip hop kid growing up who took ballet class for my technique, but knew nothing about the history of it. So
Yeah.
go into New York City Ballet, learn about this interesting theater, and then we were also treated to a staging rehearsal of Jerome Robbins's The Concert, and we got to see the Mistake Waltz.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was an empty theater and they were in costume on stage, but there were a couple times where they would like stop and make corrections and go back, which was, to me, even cooler than seeing a performance, is getting to actually see the work that goes
See the
into
machine
it.
a little bit.
And it was a funny ballet. And I had no idea before that you could laugh in a ballet. I thought it was something that was so serious. Like you just think like Swan Lake. I don't know.
Yeah.
It had never occurred to me that ballet could be anything other than serious. And so that was my very, and
Sorry, you've just broken up a little bit.
stumbling upon a bookstore. Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
I can. That was my
Can you hear
very
me now?
first. I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
So that was my very first something or other.
That was my very first introduction to the New York City Ballet. And a couple of weeks after that, I stumbled upon a used bookstore on, let's see, is it on 72nd and Broadway? It's called West Sider Records. And there was a whole entire section of used books just about dance. And so I was like, okay, I'm a dancer. I love dance. I love books. Let's look through this. And I pulled out a book and I read the back because I didn't know the names of any of these dancers. And this book was called Once a Dancer by Allegra Kent. And I read the back and it said, famed New York City ballet dancer who was the muse of Balanchine. And I was like, oh, New York City Ballet. That's that company that I just saw the other week. All right, well, let's see what this is about. And so I pulled out this book, and that was my first introduction to the world of Balanchine and the New York City Ballet from the inside, and how the dancers worked with him and how they inspired him and how all of these masterworks came to be. And from there, it was just like a snowball that kept building. I went back when I finished that book. I went to the bookstore again and I bought Jacques' book. What is his titled? Hers is, or maybe his is Once a Dancer. Okay, wait. Pause for 1 second. I'm gonna figure this out. Okay. All right. Allegra's is Once a Dancer, and his was
a different title.
I Was a Dancer, I think. Ooh. Oh, that's gonna bug me.
These are some creative titles.
So from there, I really just fell in love with the world of New York City Ballet and that company is what inspired the rest of my dance collection, honestly. I just started reading all of the books that I could find of dancers who had worked with Balanchine, and he never wrote an autobiography himself. So learning about him through the eyes and everyone's different perspectives, looking at him from, either a colleague or a dancer or a manager or someone who worked in a different company and compared themselves to him. And then from there, I started collecting books that had to do with my other interests, which were, musical theater history, film history. My degree is in graphic design. So graphic design and art history is another big thing. I love American history, just the presidents and, just the history of the country. So it kind of ballooned from there. And I went from having about 20 books in 2016 to now it's 2022 and I have 860 books in my collection.
So just
And
a couple more.
yeah, just a few. But they're all cataloged and I know exactly where they all are. Unfortunately, I can't fit them all in my New York City apartment. So about 700 of them are in my family home in Michigan, and only about 100 of them are with me, which breaks my heart to have my collection separated. But that is the origin of my book collection.
So what are the favorites?
Well, honestly, it's hard. There's been
Choose
so many
between
good
your
ones.
children.
I know, right? And part of it is just that it's been so long since I've read some of them.
Yeah.
But if I were to recommend, if you're interested in New York City Ballet specifically, I would recommend reading the autobiographies of Balanchine's wives, and then the muses that he worked most
That's a lot
closely
of
with.
autobiographies.
Well, that's only like 6.
That's too
but
many wives.
um but then from the male's perspective, Edward Villela and Jacques D'Amboise, the two of them, I really liked theirs. But to get out of the New York City ballet world, Sammy Davis Jr., I just finished reading his autobiography, and it is one of the better ones that I've read in a while. Sometimes nonfiction books can be a little dry and like fact, fact, fact. And his was just such a narrative that was it really moved me. And he came up in the world of like vaudeville, and then became a singer as well, but he had a stint on Broadway, and the people that he ran with, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all these other musical theater luminaries. It's just really cool hearing how naturally these friendships arose and how supportive Frank Sinatra was of Sammy Davis Jr. when he was coming up. And it was a really interesting read. So it's called Yes, I Can by Sammy Davis Jr. And I would highly recommend that book for any theater lovers out there.
That's great. I'm gonna have to try and get my hands on it. We don't have a heap of secondhand bookshops that have large theater sections
Mm-hmm.
out here. Probably because we don't have, I don't live in New York, and so we've got like four big theaters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rather than, is it 40? Is it a million? How many big?
Oh, I mean, there's a specific number of how many theaters meet the regulations to be considered Broadway. It has to do with like how many seats it has and how near it is. But like there are so many other theaters that are big that aren't considered Broadway. I mean, how do you even count them? Hundreds.
Yeah, whereas we've got like the Capitol and the Lyric, they're close to each other.
Uh-huh.
The Opera House has one theater that's kind of a big musical theater. It has symphony halls and stuff, but you'd be hard pressed to put a musical on in there. The Royal, which just reopened after a couple of years, and the one Sydney Theatre Company is in, which has a name.
Hmm.
but is a little bit further away. So not the same. You don't just walk past
Yep.
theater, which
Right.
I feel like
Right.
would be very cool. So you are now a bit of a Balanchine you're a Balanchine
An
aficionado,
enthusiast,
an enthusiast,
aficionado, enthusiast. Yeah.
nerd,
Yes.
serious Balanchine nerd. What are the favorite ballets and who are the favorite dancers?
Oh, okay.
Choose
First one,
again
first
between your
ballet.
children.
Right. Right. And I'm still learning. I'm still getting to see new ballets all the time. I by no means have this like all-encompassing, knowledge of all of his ballets. So every season I'm always seeing something new. But one that comes to mind right off the bat is I love Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux. That one's just so exciting and short and sweet, and it's like, I don't know, every single time it feels brand new. Um, what else would be on the list? People either love to love it or they love to hate it, but the Nutcracker,
Yeah.
because dancers, they have to do it over and over every season, or every Christmas season. um and it can become a little bit like traumatic hearing the music over and over.
I
um
know
I
more.
but I really love it because it has such a rich and interesting history. Going back to Russia and learning about, Balanchine himself was in the original production, and he was the candy cane, and how he preserved some of that choreography and actually placed that into the New York City Ballet's version. And um, getting to see, okay, so here's another piece of my story is, a couple months ago, I got a job as an usher at the New York City Ballet. So, on top
Get
of
paid to
all
watch
of the
ballet.
reading I had done before, I now get paid to watch the ballet every night. And it's so exciting, and really more ballets, than I had before. But I got to watch the Nutcracker this season over 30 times with a new cast, of principals every night, and getting to see how each couple interprets the choreography differently and the music differently every night. And it was entertaining, but also educational to get to experience the same choreography so many different ways.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess to keep it simple, I'll say Tchaikovsky, Pas de Deux, and Nutcracker. But I mean,
All the
gosh, there's so many more that I could. Yeah. As far as dancers go, you know, currently there's three female principals that I love because they are all so unique and different in their styles, and um, they're big personalities on social media as well. So it's so unique that we get to learn about artists from this other perspective. You don't just see them on the stage and the curtain comes down and they disappear. You get to see their artistic process. So I really admire Tyler Peck, Megan Fairchild, and Sarah Mearns. Um, Tyler, I really love her versatility and how she has this great jazz background and how she can still slip back into that for different performances. Um, it's a similar technique, but it also is very different, and not everyone can easily slide back and forth between those styles.
Yeah.
Um, Megan Fairchild, I really enjoy seeing her journey as a principal dancer who is a mother of three, and watching her journey of coming back after her first pregnancy and then after having her twins, um, and how she navigates that. And Sarah Mearns, I love her work ethic and her dedication to her craft. And I identify a lot with her process and how she goes about preparing for roles. Um, so those are the three. But I got to give a shout out to Mira Naden and Roman Mejia. They're like the next up and coming dancers that I'm loving watching their journey as they start to rise through the ranks and take on new roles.
So watch out for them once.
Yes.
I mean, you can watch them now. They dance now, but
Yep,
also in
yep,
the future.
yep. And being an usher, we start back. The winter season starts next week, and we're going to be getting back into it. And I'm really excited to see all the new roles that people get to take on.
What are you excited to see in the winter season? What's
I'm excited to see, well, Slaughter on 10th Avenue. That one's coming back again. And that one's just like a good time. That one's so fun. We got to see it last season with Maria Karowski's Farewell. And that was a really special performance with, again, like really great, kind of that like once in a lifetime energy that you don't get all the time. Um, what else is coming back this season? Um, I had it written down and it's disappeared.
just something I love about Slaughter is how it just used to be in a musical, and then they were like, "Yeah, we can do that. We'll pull that out of the musical." No one knows the musical anymore.
Oh, gosh, you know what? I'm not finding it.
It's all
Okay,
right.
sorry about that.
If you can believe it, I don't expect you to have the whole winter season memorized.
Well, I did just go through the whole season the other day because I'm preparing my next season's post. Like on Instagram,
Yeah.
I go back and I go through the digital archives at the New York City Ballet Public Library, not New York City Ballet, the New York City Public Library, their digital archives, and I pull out historical photos from the original casts of these different ballets. So I actually have gone through all of the ballets that are coming up this season. Rubies will be another good one to see. I'm disappointed that they're not having the full jewels be performed this season. They're just doing Rubies, but nonetheless, any part of jewels that you get to see is always special.
Rubies is my favorite part of Jules, but I think I like that it's a bit jazzy and it's a bit like different from what you see normally in
Uh-huh.
ballet.
Rubies is still growing on me. I think my favorite is emeralds and then diamonds and then rubies. It's it's growing on me.
And then one of the first things that brought you to my attention was all of your lockdown dancing. You
Yes.
just one day you were like, yeah, I had this idea. I choreographed a thing. I went to the park and I filmed it. I filmed me doing the dance two different ways and I edited it together. Good way to spend a couple of hours. I was like, that's
I
so cool.
I know exactly which video you're talking about. I've had that happen a couple times, but that was one specific one where yeah, I think everyone had to find new ways, new creative outlets during the pandemic and the lockdown when we weren't able to collaborate in person. And a lot of people were able to use Zoom and different videos of people being separate and editing that together. And I definitely was involved with some projects like that. But um, that relies on other people taking the time to rehearse on their own, or relies on other people sending a video that's the right quality for you to use, or people committing to the time that it takes. And so finally I was just like, I want to create art on my own terms and have it done when I want it to be done and know that I'm happy with the quality of it. And so I started doing these videos where I would dance all of the parts in it. It would be one or two or three of me on the screen in different costumes or changing costumes throughout with the magic of video editing. And, a big part of it is I've really fallen in love with jazz music and like pop jazz or
Yeah.
standards from like the 40s, 50s, 60s. And a lot of young dancers now don't necessarily, that's not what they're listening to on the radio. So they're not familiar with all of these classic songs.
Yeah.
And I relate to them musically a lot. And I wanted to start dancing to them so that people who might not hear this music normally, or who might hear it and flip the station immediately because they're not interested in it, I wanted to catch people's attention visually so that they
Yeah.
might hear the music in a new way. And, that's something that I resonate a lot with Balanchine's philosophy of choreographing is, a lot of his ballets were plotless and not emotionless, but they didn't have a story. I feel like they have an aura, they have a vibe, they have a
Yeah.
mood, but they don't necessarily, everyone who watches those ballets can take from it what they want rather than the choreographer saying, this is what I want you to feel.
Yeah, it's not Sleeping Beauty where it's Act 1, you meet her and she's a princess.
Right.
And
Right. So I found this really great quote where Balanchine was very succinct about this philosophy. He said, Stravinsky's work altogether satisfies me. When I listen to a work by him, I am moved. I don't like the word inspired. I am moved to try to make visible not only the rhythm, melody, and harmony, but even the timbres of the instruments. So he wanted to make music something that people could see. And when I watch a ballet, even if I know that music, all of a sudden I'm hearing things that I had never heard before, because a lot of times you just tune into the melody. You're not tuning into, these other things going on. And so I wanted to take that and do that with jazz and pull out different things in the music visually that people might not normally hear when they listen to those songs. And so it's really the music that inspired me to do all of those pandemic projects where I was relentlessly every day filming and recording and posting new videos. And it was really good. It kept me creatively engaged in a time when there was not a lot of collaboration possible.
yeah. My pandemic project was the podcast. So
Which I think is amazing. And as we have both ballet and nurse, I think it's so important for it to be being passed on. Oh,
yeah.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
As you know, with my love of ballet and musical theater history, it's so important not to just learn it for ourselves, but to make it accessible to the next generation so that they can learn from it too. So that's what I really love about your podcast, is that it's making it accessible to more people in a really great format where, a book can sometimes seem like a burden to people. Not everyone is a reader, and there's so much great information in books, but you're kind of bringing it out and making it something that people can listen to and learn it in a different way.
Thank you. One of the interesting things that I've noticed is that learning more about that history helps me understand contemporary things that are happening. Like, a lot of people don't get cats, but I go, well, it's not musical theater. It's not a musical. It's a review, like an old timey review about cats.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, well, of course it won't work as a movie. Whenever they took a review from Broadway back when that was like, you'd be like, this show was successful. Let's take one of the songs and write a totally new thing. They put plots in them because they needed plot.
Right.
Film needs plot in a way that musical reviews or even ballet doesn't.
Right.
So what's next? What are the dreams?
The dreams to be, there's a couple dreams. As a performer, I want to get to perform. Right now I'm in the stage where I am auditioning and taking classes with, industry professionals, and just trying to kind of break into that performing world. Actually, during 2 years, or the first year and a half of the pandemic, I left New York City to go back home to Michigan. So I've been returning, I returned this past September. So it's kind of reacclimating to the city and the way the city is now, and
Yeah.
reacquainting, myself with people that I've worked with. So I want to be on stage, and it doesn't have to be a Broadway stage, but a stage where I can entertain people and be that visual form of the music
Yeah.
for them. And
I was just gonna ask which Broadway choreographers do you think do a good job of showing the music? Do you? That's totally.
Do I have favorites? Yes, I have
What are the
favorites.
favorite Broadway choreographers?
Josh Bergas is someone who I've trained with quite a bit, and I've seen 3 or 4 of the shows that he's choreographed. I really like how he hears music, and actually training with him has changed the way that I hear music. It has made me listen in a more nuanced way. And while you're doing this season about ballet and musical theater, I'm sure, I don't know, do you know the cool little connection between Josh and New York City Ballet? He's married to Sarah Mearns, the principal dancer of New York City Ballet.
That's good to know.
Yes. So when he did, he choreographed I Married an Angel when New York City Center did the revival in 2018. And he got to choreograph for Sarah Mearns, his wife. She was the lead in it. And you'll appreciate this. It was like this really cool historical parallel, because I Married an Angel in 1938 was originally choreographed by George Balanchine for his wife then, Vera Zorina. So is this cool, husband choreographing for wife, New York City Ballet connection. We love that.
That's so amazing. It's so amazing how that happens.
Yes, I think from articles that I've read that was on purpose a little bit, that they were aware of that parallel, but still, I loved that happened. And same thing with West Side Story with Jerome Robbins. He was the resident choreographer of New York City Ballet, and he did, the original concept and choreography of West Side. And with the recent movie, Justin Peck was the choreographer, and he's the resident choreographer of New York City Ballet as well. So I just love when history kind of repeats itself in that way, in a positive sense.
Yeah, the good things repeat. Cool people choreograph cool shows.
Yes.
Like that's the history of repeating that we love.
Yeah.
We don't need to repeat like Jerome Robbins' rehearsal etiquette, for example.
No. That can stay in the past.
I'm like, I love the ballet so much, and dude, just be nice to people. It's not that hard.
Yeah. He's a very internally tortured man.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I'm very lucky that when I've learnt Jerome Robbins' choreography, it's been from nice people who say nice things. I haven't had anyone yell at me or been in a situation where I'm like, yeah, if you fall off the back of the stage into the orchestra pit, I'm gonna be a little bit happy about that.
What have you gotten to learn?
I did a little bit of Cool and a little bit of America.
Oh, that's fun.
So, America is actually Peter Gennaro, but
I have yet to learn any of his choreography, but would love to. So,
yeah,
I'm jealous of you.
Thank you. I feel like that's. I guess the last question is dream. What would be the dream shows? Like, if I could wave a magic wand and build a show around you, what musical am I getting the rights for, or what ballet am I getting the rights for?
For as much as I love ballet, I'm not what you would consider like a typical ballet dancer. That's not really where my talents lie. I have, since out of my hip hop days, I've since transitioned into being like a musical theater, jazz, Fosse style dancer. But I also really, really love swing dance and swing music.
Yeah,
So my dream show is Bandstand. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show.
I do know it. I do know it.
Okay.
I'm a big Laura Osnes fan from her Anything Goes days.
Yes.
Like,
So I saw that one 3 times before it closed on Broadway. I auditioned for the tour. I got a call back, but didn't get past that. But that would be my dream show. Andy Blankenbuehler choreography. So it's this amazing swing music. You've got the live musicians on the stage with you in the cast, and it's so grounded and um, it's swing. So that is the dream show. There's so many parts about that show that I really, really, really loved and would love to be in.
yeah, I obviously haven't seen it. We only get a couple of musicals out here a year, and they don't tend to
Mhm.
be bandstand.
Right.
Um, we're getting an American in Paris this year. I'm very excited about that.
Yes, you guys have Robbie Fairchild there right now.
And Leanne Cope, they both came out to do it.
Yes.
So
Okay, for your listeners, Robbie Fairchild is a former principal of New York City Ballet. All the crossover between musical theater and ballet, it's just endless.
we got Christopher Wheeldon choreographing it. I
Yeah.
mean, he did in the past. He's not coming out to
Right.
re-choreograph it, but it's adorable seeing them take photos with like koalas and stuff.
Yeah.
Just doing exactly what you do when you come to Australia. Hug a
Yep.
koala. I haven't hugged a koala and I've always been here. I should go do that.
Yes, go act like a tourist.
The time when I definitely feel the most touristy is walking around Sydney Harbour, either to Sydney Dance Company and Sydney Theatre Company on one end, or to the Opera House on the other end, and you can see the bridge.
Uh-huh.
And it's the ultimate like, yes, I am going to be a tourist in Sydney today. I'm going to just do the walk. It might be shorter to walk, not directly exactly all the way around the harbour, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yep. Have you visited the States before? Have you
I
been to New York?
haven't. I've never left Australia. I'm.
Oh, you gotta come visit.
I know. I
Come
keep
see the
joking.
shows.
Keep joking with my husband that we should go out and see The Music Man, just because I love Sutton Foster and he loves Hugh Jackman,
Yeah,
and I love tap dancing, but it's kind of complicated to travel right now, so I don't know that that's gonna happen.
that's true. That is true, unfortunately. All right, well, I'll go see it and I'll let you know how
Yeah, take a little camera. Don't do that. Don't do that.
it is.
That's
Oh
illegal.
no, I'd be too terrified because now as an usher myself, I'm the one that has to go around and tell people to put their phones away when they get them out at the ballet and I have to be the bad guy. So now I would be too afraid to pull it out in another theater because I'm like, I understand your pain as an usher having to go through and,
Imagine if someone
reprimand
caught
people.
you and like scandal of scandals. Usher
Right.
caught secretly filming ballet for Australia.
Right. Oh,
Well, you go see The Music Man and tell me how it is, and then I'll just be sad, maybe,
come
or
and just
I'll
come
go
and see it
see
as soon
American
as you
Paris.
can.
Yeah,
Hopefully the restrictions lift and we can travel freely soon.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I love any chance that I can to just ramble about ballet and Balanchine and theater. So I hope that something that I said, will resonate with you or your listeners.
I definitely have some like bits of research that I'm like, cool, that's going in the to-do list. There's so
Yeah.
much research to do. I always have a theater book in my head.
Yes. It's never ending. As soon as I finish a book, there's another one on my shelf, and then that one leads you to something else. You go, wow, I didn't know that that person was involved with that show. Let me go find out. And it's never ending, but so much fun.
Yeah, strongly agree. Strongly agree.
Well, thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you.